Welcome to A Slice with Dice, where education meets inspiration and leadership meets real life. I'm Corey Alderdice, Executive Director of the Arkansas School for Mathematics, Sciences, and the Arts. With 2 decades in school leadership, I'll share what I've learned from walking the tightrope between policy and practice, especially when it comes to doing right by gifted students and their futures. Ready to dive in? Here's this week's Slice. In our last conversation, we explored the paradigms of student experience: transitional, transformational, typical, and at the center, catalytic agency. Each paradigm reflects a blend of intentionalities: eclipse, evolve, and escape. And each points us toward different ways of understanding how dissatisfaction fuels growth. But understanding intentionalities and paradigms is only half the work. The other half is figuring out what to do with them. How do educators respond once we've recognized that dissatisfaction is not just noise, but signal? And how do we turn that signal into opportunity? And that's where the 3 levers of practice come in: accelerate, elevate, and separate. So these are not new words in education, but the catalytic agency model brings them together in a fresh way. They represent the core actions schools can take to respond to dissatisfaction. Acceleration raises the ceiling, elevation affirms belonging, and separation creates new context. Used wisely, they narrow the satisfaction gap. Used carelessly, they risk making it worse. So let's start with acceleration, because this is the lever most familiar to educators of gifted students. Acceleration means moving faster, going deeper, or pushing higher. It might look like curriculum compacting, grade skipping, advanced placement, concurrent enrollment, or simply giving a student permission to stretch further than the syllabus requires. When students express eclipse when they say, "I want more," acceleration is the natural response. It acknowledges that their dissatisfaction isn't arrogance or impatience, but readiness. They are hungry for challenge, and acceleration gives them the harder problems, the deeper texts, the richer opportunities that they crave. Take Nora, a 7th grader who whips through her math assignments in half the time and then tunes out. To some, her behavior looks like distraction, but it's really eclipse. When given the chance to move into algebra 2 years ahead of schedule, she lights up. Acceleration channels her restlessness into growth. But acceleration has its risk. If we accelerate without elevating, without affirming identity and belonging, students can become brittle achievers. They may master advanced content but feel out of place socially or emotionally. They may become isolated, pressured to perform, but unsupported in becoming. For acceleration to succeed, it must be paired thoughtfully with other levers. Now, the second lever is elevation, and in many ways, I think it's the most overlooked. Elevation is about affirmation. It's about helping students feel seen, valued, and connected. It involves mentoring, recognition, representation, and creation of spaces where students can grow into who they are becoming. When students express evolve, when they say, "I want to become," elevation is the answer. Their dissatisfaction is less about academic ceilings and more about identity. They are asking, "Do I fit here?" or "Does anyone notice me?" So consider Marcus, a 10th grader who does well academically but feels like an outsider. He's the only student from his neighborhood in advanced classes. He doesn't see anyone who shares his background. His dissatisfaction is evolve. When he's connected with a mentor who understands his experience and affirms his aspirations, his posture changes. Elevation turns isolation into resilience. But here too are risks. If we elevate without substance, if recognition is shallow or performative, students see through it. A certificate without challenge or a pep talk without opportunity feels hollow. Elevation must be authentic, grounded in real opportunities and relationships. Otherwise, it risks deepening the gap it was meant to close. And the third lever is separation. Now, this one can be the most controversial, but it's also essential in conversation. Separation means placing students in new context when the current one is no longer working. And that might look like specialized programs, magnet schools, residential academies, or simply new peer cohorts that provide a fresh start. When students express escape, when they say, "I need out," separation is the lever that answers. It doesn't dismiss their satisfaction as weakness, it honors it as clarity. They are telling us that the environment itself is misaligned, and no amount of challenge or affirmation will fix that. Take Sophia, a junior who feels invisible in her large high school. She dreams of studying science but can't find peers or teachers who share her passion. She begins skipping class, not because she lacks ability, but because she feels suffocated. Her dissatisfaction is escape, and when she transfers into a STEM-focused magnet program, she flourishes. Separation doesn't rescue her, it actually releases her. Yet, separation also carries its own risk. If we separate without elevating, placing a student in a new program without affirming their identity, they may feel alienated in a new context. If we separate without accelerating, providing a fresh environment but not greater challenge, they may feel the move was cosmetic. Separation works best when it is part of a sequence, not a standalone fix. And so the real art of practice lies not just in knowing the three levers, but in sequencing them wisely. Because rarely does a student need only one. Most actually need a thoughtful combination. Transitional students, those blending eclipse and evolve, need acceleration and elevation together. Rigor without recognition, again, makes them brittle. Recognition without rigor makes them complacent. They need both to thrive. Transformational students, those blending evolve and escape, need a specific sequence. Elevation first, separation second, acceleration third. They must feel affirmed before they can flourish in a new environment, and they must have both before acceleration can succeed. And typical gifted students, those blending eclipse and escape, need acceleration and separation at the same time. Harder work in the same stale environment won't spark them. A new context without rigor will feel empty. They need both together. And catalytic students, those embodying all three intentionalities, require all three levers: flexibility and often simultaneously. Their dissatisfaction is comprehensive, and their agency is catalytic. Responding piecemeal? Well, that simply won't do. So when we get the sequencing right, dissatisfaction narrows. Students re-engage, rediscover joy, and grow. When we get it wrong, when we missequence, we risk deepening the gap. Accelerating too soon, elevating without substance, separating without support. Each misstep can make the dissatisfaction worse rather than better. One of the striking things about these levers is that they apply not just to individual students, but to systems. Schools accelerate when they expand advanced course offerings. They elevate when they build cultures of belonging and recognition. And they separate when they create specialized opportunities or structures that offer new context. At the policy level, states and districts accelerate when they fund early college access. They elevate when they support mentoring and identity-affirming initiatives. They separate when they create magnet schools or residential academies. The same logic applies at every scale. The levers work for a single student in the classroom, and they work for entire cohorts across a state. When I look back on my years of working in gifted and talented education, what strikes me most is how often dissatisfaction has been misread. The student who doodles in the margins is written off as inattentive. The student who withdraws is disengaged. The student who says, I need out, is told, guess what, toughen up. And in each case, the dissatisfaction is treated as a problem to silence rather than that signal to interpret. The catalytic agency model asks us to flip that script. Again, dissatisfaction is not a flaw, it's readiness. Eclipse tells us students are ready for more. Evolve tells us they are ready to become. Escape tells us they are ready for something new. Our job as educators is to respond wisely, with acceleration, with elevation, and if needed, with separation. But it's not just about knowing the levers, it's about using them in the right sequence with humility and care. Because when we do, dissatisfaction becomes not the end of learning, but the beginning of growth. A Slice with Dice is a production of Aldercube. Thanks for making time to reflect with me. If you're finding value in these episodes, I hope you'll subscribe and help spread the word. Until next week, lead boldly, listen closely, and keep pushing forward. I'll see you then.